All right.
I think we're ready. Thanks, everybody, for your patience and my snafu in getting us started. So I'm going to just hand it over to Xiaowen and let him introduce himself.
Well, thanks, Marlon and Matt, to arrange this. Hello, everybody. Good Friday morning or afternoon or what time zone is having you there. So I'm from Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and also in CSA here on campus. It's a pleasure to do this. What I want to emphasize is this is a group work, privileged to have folks working with me as the spirit of workflow suggests. It is to stitch a lot of things together. Essentially, 4 elements of my talk. I'm going to approach from the top to the middle and then bottom up, and then later convert to workflow-related topics. For those of you who are not familiar with GIS or CyberGIS, a very concise definition. It's GIS based on advanced cyberinfrastructure, and but GIS is now a very broad domain, and this acronym stands for a lot of things, from systems to science and services. And it's huge industry, hundreds of billion dollars aggregated global revenue, and it's getting to be the size close to and a half of the global airline industry, collecting, if you count all the geo services. But from scientific point of view, it is really to treat geospatial elements as a special knowledge for especially the computing and the data handling aspects. If we want to simplify the definition and the context of our discussion today, CyberGIS is really tailored to big geospatial data problems through big compute approaches to enable big collaboration for solving complex geospatial problems. As you might know, CyberGIS has lots of application domains. I list a few. There are agriculture, emergency management, and so forth. One particular one is relevant to the examples today I'm going to share with you is this U.S. Geological Survey, the 3-dimensional elevation program, which is relatively new, a few years old. The idea here is to have the national scan of topographic representation based on LiDAR. This will lead to, for one scan of the entire country, getting to horizontal 9-centimeter resolution per square meter, multiple points, point cloud coverage. Is going to be about 10 petabytes raw data without considering derived products. And I think we are facing a very interesting challenge, but lots of opportunities is how to manage the access and also the derived products, having science take advantage of the exciting and very useful data and analytics altogether. And on this page, I'm showing you, even for our precision ag, we're talking about having this data available to the relevant communities would lead to about $2 billion annual benefits. So it's very high impact and societally beneficial kind of science we're talking about. A particular collaboration we have, this in fact is closely related to Exceed, the Advanced User Support Services. NANCS is managing. We have had now several years collaboration with Dave Tarleton's group at Utah State and Yan and me from the CyberGIS and Exceed side, trying to understand how to piece this workflow together. And this is a very much data-driven workflow, have multiple steps. CloudDIM, in fact, has a plugin on popular commercial GIS platform, which is called ArcGIS. You could access CloudDIM. You could also access CloudDIM as command line tools. You could directly download. Dave has the software package online. our focus here is how would you enable this workflow, tie it together with the CyberGIS, and also make it scalable to big data and have interactive features, because as you can imagine, GIS a lot of times is map-based. It has analytics, require very interactive response. If you don't have that interactivity enabled, you quickly turn off most of the GIS users. So we need to consider interactivity, scalability, and another major focus of this exercise is how do you make this workflow accessible to collaborative groups and reuse parts of the workflow, because not every analysis of tau dim requires all the steps. Depending upon the data product you would want to have in your hydrological information analysis, you only need pieces of this workflow to be part of your analysis. So I'm going to show you a quick demo here. This is the CyberGIS Gateway online application. I was thinking to do a live demo, but considering the video conferencing recording here, probably good to just do this as a video capture. Once you get into this CyberGIS Gateway environment, you see a number of apps. Tau dim currently is implemented as one app. We're currently accessing the USGS 10-meter national elevation, 10-meter resolution at national elevation data sets. You could select any part and start choose which data products you want to derive using tau dim. Correspondingly, based on your selection, you would see different workflow configurations matching to the data products you want to derive. And you could go into each component of the workflow to see what that part does. And you could specify parameters for that particular component, and then also have associated parameters, as you would see here. The Douglas-Puker stream is a particular feature of the data product you need the parameter for. A nice thing about this environment as a collaborative environment is that this is a wiki system. You would be able to annotate each component of your workflow. In fact, you saw both Ian and Dave Tarbolton contributed to the description of the Douglas-Puker algorithm piece, documenting what that does. This is very important if you consider the collaborative aspect of the workflow, because you need different domains of experts, in this case is hydrology and GIS knowledge, to be stitched together, and this knowledge tends to also evolve. It's not like one shot. Your knowledge will be good forever, because you implement new algorithms. In fact, we have a local collaboration with bless you, Ian. Local collaboration here with some hydrologists have some very cutting-edge LiDAR data-based hydro analysis code. If that is available, we could certainly plug that into this kind of environment. So the knowledge is evolving, and the community needs this kind of collaborative mechanism to evolve the knowledge. Now it's getting to the results part of the analysis. You see this is the streams derived from digital elevation model data, and the workflow part, in fact, is saved. So you could launch a new analysis using the same workflow. You could adjust not only parameters of the different components of the workflow, but you could also add new data products that would automatically change the workflow based on last time you did with the existing workflow. So this shows you, I think it's quite a representative use case scenario in the context of hydrological data analysis, but very much on the CyberGIS Gateway interface side, and you see the entire process. Although the computing part of running tau dim codes, in fact, generally done on trestles at SDSC, but the user interface is engineered, designed in a fashion that gives users always some prompt feedback so that users are engaged. This is particularly important for working with the CyberGIS users, as I mentioned earlier. even broadly speaking, GIS users. I think in the domain of CyberGIS, we see quite diverse cyber environments and associated resources. This include parallel computing approaches. Used to be viewed in GIS literature as a way of accelerating the computational processes for GIS analytics. Now we see a large number of GIS algorithms going to CyberGIS required to be based on new parallel designs and implementations. And the heterogeneous architecture, of course, is not only just a parallel, it's GPU and others. And the GIS, a lot of times, you carry your smartphones around and using location-based services. Mobile is a very important user interface modality of CyberGIS, and GIS itself oftentimes associated with the distributed computing and information environments. And if you consider CyberGIS, it's basically cuts across all these different cyber environments and also resources, and this requires us to be very careful about architecting and also designing the workflow structure. And scalability here, of course, is a challenge if you consider how many devices people could move with, and if you provide a particular application to be available on those devices, and this is posing challenges in terms of the scalability. And of course, computing, as we were talking about the digital elevation model data. Remember, getting to the gateway, this means a number of users could simultaneously access TileDim as an application, and this would pose pretty significant computational loads if we really have no careful design or consideration that could easily at least swamp the back-end computing resources. So now move to some fundamentals. This is the theoretical and the methodological aspects of algorithms going to CyberGIS. And this question has been asked for a little while. The question pointing to the nature of computational intensity of spatial analysis, essentially what CyberGIS analytics is all about. And similar question, of course, computer scientists ask all the time is what the nature of computational complexity of an algorithm. Now, its computational intensity is generally associated with the computational requirements. This is about memory, data access, computing performance, and so forth. It's very much on the computational requirements, but the argument here is you really need to focus on the spatial characteristics of computational requirements tied to different analytics. So a very simple example here is if you would consider spatial search, nearest neighbor search. In fact, more dense measurements generally means less computationally intensive. Therefore, if you have a large spatial domain to work with, you generally decompose the more dense areas less, while you would decompose more sparse domains more. This is counterintuitive because if you don't explicitly consider spatial characteristics, you might decompose dense measurements more and more sparse measurements less. If you treat the spatial characteristics as the central part of your design of parallel algorithms, you would generally have the opposite way. So what we argued in the literature is you really have to have very solid understanding of spatial computational domain that represents the computational intensity associated with the spatial characteristics. Now, back to the question, what is the granularity of your spatial computational domain for guiding the data partitioning and your algorithmic development? In fact, this is a hard problem because it's a trade-off. The domain needs to be coarse to ensure the decomposition of the domain is computationally inexpensive because this is an optimization problem. itself. It's in fact computing the optimal granularity would be an NP-hard problem itself. But you need heuristic solutions just to figure out the optimal partition in your data and algorithm to move forward without figuring out the absolute optimal scheme. So again, related to the digital elevation model data we were talking about using the USGS 3DAP program, here a simple analysis to compute visibility. For instance, a person on a piece of terrain want to look around to see what are visible to this person. That is highly determined by the elevation around this person. There is an algorithmic process called viewshed to determine the visible areas. By the way, the folks are hearing me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, it's good.
Yes.
Thanks. Good, thanks. So this is a sort of diagrammatic illustration of that process. Again, you could easily come up with gigabytes, tens of gigabytes data to work with for this kind of visibility or viewshed analysis. This is a piece of Utah State data at 1 meter resolution, sort of close to the lighter data derived products you need to work with for either hydrological information analysis or for this simple viewshed analysis. Generally, this needs to be accelerated. You consider the interactive aspects of your workflow, especially now what you need to decompose is based on the spatial computational domain. And for this analysis, you would benefit from a multi-scale representation. Again, if you're interested in the technical details, you could go into to this paper. What I'm showing you is if you just want to do a single-scale decomposition, that would be the coarse GPU implementation versus more multi-scale representation or decomposition of the spatial computation domain. That would be the GPU fine implementation, and you do see the different speed-ups and the benefits for going to the fine scale multi-level decomposition. Another interesting thing to point out here is that depending upon the terrain features, you see flat and peak in the different aspects of the terrain. In fact, the algorithmic performance varies. So this again shows you the spatial characteristics. Having a good understanding of those characteristics have also provide you guidance for understanding the performance of your analytics. So there's some theoretical foundation. However, you would parallelize your basic algorithms or design your algorithms. You actually have some performance constraints or benefits embedded into the basic spatial computational domain formulation. So broadly speaking, what is the foundation of constructing CyberGIS workflow is to understand the spatial characteristics. I was telling you the distribution aspects, but there are other aspects such as dependence and also integration and others, and fuse that into the computational aspects. We were addressing the complexity versus intensity, but if you go to multi-scale representation I was talking about, that has to also sacrifice your accuracy of the viewshed calculations. In general, the resolution change across scales lead to different quality of the results. So there's different kinds of trade-off, and the CyberGIS analytics need to balance and also synergize between the spatial and the computational aspects. Now going to the advanced cyber infrastructure dimension, CyberGIS is based on extreme scale computing. We've benefited enormously from NSF earlier TeraGrid now exceed the resources and the services. We also take advantage of Open Science Grid and multiple cloud computing resource types. And example like Blue Water here, it's a balanced compute and data capability machine. And if you consider a lot of CyberGIS analytics, the traditional GIS algorithms are basically not ready for getting good scalability out of this kind of machine. So very exciting research is ongoing, but much more at the community level. We have to do a lot of work to understand how to take advantage of this kind of resources in CyberGIS workflow. So finally, converge on the CyberGIS workflow itself is contextualized into this kind of framework, synergizing across high-performance computing, but also big data to knowledge transformation pipelines. Normally, people refer to this as, Hadoop, Spark, Shark, big data kind of resources and environments, and also high fidelity visualization and collaboration support. I need to credit this grant for us to make good progress on the CyberGIS workflow. I'm going to tell you more about Nancy's on the call, working with her, and also Chung Han from SDSC and a number of colleagues listed on this page. This is a 5-year grant. Now we're into the 5th year. It's also in a collaboration with USGS, I mentioned earlier, but also industry. Esri is arguably the largest GIS software company, is partnering with us, trying to see what is the complementarity between our scientific work and what they could offer to the scientific community. So the project aims to establish a collaborative software framework. We see now is getting a solid foundation into place, encompassing many research fields. I'll share with you what other research fields beyond the examples I already mentioned in hydrology and water resources. But the gist of this collaborative framework is to treat geo and spatial characteristics in a special, careful manner, so that we could leverage such characteristics not only in algorithm design, system design, but also in workflow design. So it's a seamless integration. The 4 tiers I'm indexing my talk based on today, in fact, reflect this seamless integration that is going to help us scale to big data, complex analysis and visualization, and empower high-performance collaborative geospatial problem solving. And to scientifically understand, it is a very broad ecosystem of geospatial tools and software and associated applications, and how do we sustain this kind of diverse ecosystems. That's another thing we are hoping to contribute some scientific knowledge to the broad communities. From the workflow side, you see the diverse aspects of the middleware here, from not only high-performance computing support to data visualization, but also distributed analysis, considering the very broad and diverse cyber environments and resources I was telling you about. That's what the CyberGIS cuts across. It's not just a community code base, such as in some other physical sciences. So you go into some high-performance computers and you run the codes, you evolve the codes for the community. I mean, this is not only the codes, this is the user interface, this is the workflow, and this is the tight integration between the application domain and geospatial technologies. So it's a lot of things need to be sliced and diced, packaged appropriately to serve different scientific purposes in the context of CyberGIS workflow. So you look at the linkages among the different parts of the workflow. This is going to distributed analysis, because a lot of times you have analytics want to be broadly accessible and virtualized and provisioned, in many cases through a cloud computing approach. But for individual computation, a lot of times is going to require scalable computing resources and algorithms. That's the high-performance computing box on the left bottom side. And there's very heavy data and visualization aspect. In fact, this is a strong tradition of GIS analytics. And the collaboration is comparatively new, and traditional GIS approaches and tools are not very much supporting collaboration. But now, given that we're moving to cloud, moving to online, gateways, and this becomes very desirable to a number of scientific cases and problem-solving scenarios. So we see this kind of organic linkages across the different dimensions of the middleware, piecing the different elements together of the CyberGIS framework. And if you look at it from a user's point of view, what is CyberGIS working for whom? And I want to talk to you about three user communities from their specific needs point of view. I already talked about Gateway briefly. Gateway, as we all know, is a friendly entry door to the world of cyber infrastructure. So in the same spirit, CyberGIS Gateway is attempting to lower the entry doors to geospatial workflow and analytics, because conventionally in the GIS context, GIS analytics are still oftentimes requiring technical savvy or training to understand what you would do with the analytics and the workflow. And CyberGIS Gateway, taking a different approach, it's very much application specific. You saw the CloudDIM applications. There are other kinds of applications are very much focused on specific domain application workflow, as opposed to conventional GIS workflow is focused on the organization and management of generic GIS analytics. For instance, if you take the popular ArcGIS as an example, you would get from the GIS toolbox of ArcGIS easily, multiple hundred analytical functions. And even for a GIS professor to teach students, you normally only teach about maybe a few dozens of those common used analytics, and it's very counterintuitive to package all them together so that you have to navigate through that complex analytical workflow space. CyberGIS Gateway is breaking down that monolithic architecture and very much taking an application-driven approach, and this, we argue, is tremendously simplify the user interface and also enable more science communities who are not GIS savvy, technical savvy, are able to benefit from the GIS analytical power as CyberGIS would be able to provide. On the GISolve side, this is the middleware. I'll tell you a bit more later, but the toolkit is more of the scalable GIS or CyberGIS software components. These components are vetted on supercomputers, especially Xseed supercomputers, to go through performance evaluation process and computational intensity analysis and tune the modules, individual modules, to best take advantage of specific supercomputers. This includes an example of CloudDIM, although I showed you earlier as an application and also workflow example, but a specific CloudDIM components in that software package now is getting scalable on a few supercomputers on Xseed to also make that software component from CloudDIM available as an open source piece to the broad community. And the GISolve, as you might know, in the world of GIS, people are getting used to developing GIS applications based on libraries and service calls or APIs. We are having GISolve to serve as that purpose, managing the complexity of accessing cyber infrastructure, wrapping them up into service APIs so that GIS application developers would not need to be concerned about what's the complexity on the cyber infrastructure side. So CyberGIS Gateway, you could go, there are two instances. One is the sandbox, that's more of a development, new versions, rollout, and the Gateway is a more of a reliable production quality instance. As I mentioned, this is to lower entry door to CyberGIS analytics, even to achieve the simplicity much more than the conventional GIS analytics could offer. And this is a global distribution of the users currently CyberGIS Gateway has. So you see it's across all the continents where people live, and primarily this is still in the U.S. and some users coming from Europe and China, and a little bit from Australia and even I think Africa, South Africa primarily. I think, yeah. So service APIs, we have a lot in the GISolve service space, but right now getting exposed to some very basic aspects of those services for managing computation and data access, and also security aspects of protecting the cyber infrastructure resources. Again, I was talking about a broad CyberGIS ecosystem. This, in fact, was a diagram crafted by some Esri colleagues, and they showed how the CyberGIS Gateway and ArcGIS Online, which you could think of as a CyberGIS modality from the commercial side, and we had multiple experiments showing how CyberGIS Gateway could interoperate with the ArcGIS Online, primarily coming from the data interoperability side, but we also had some experiences of engaging GISolve to have the analytics interoperate with each other across these two kinds of environments, of online environments, more precisely. So I mentioned the toolkit. This is, in fact, currently serving a pretty small community, as you can understand. There are not a whole lot of data computational scientists from the geospatial technology realm are comfortable yet with the supercomputers. So we hope to grow that community through the CyberGIS toolkit approach by sharing open source codes of different application domains to generate interest of sharing scalable codes for taking advantage of supercomputers for CyberGIS analytics. So right now this web page shows some downloadable open source modules for CyberGIS toolkit, and I should distinguish between science of CyberGIS. This is a whole lot about integration across high-end computing, data to knowledge transformation, visualization, and collaboration support. And this, in fact, represents some complex systems you need to manage. Speaking of the CyberGIS architecture and interoperability I was alluded to across multiple kinds of online systems, and scalability, of course, is a very important factor as we are talking about leveraging high-end computers. And the reliability is also pretty important because you run, for instance, TAUDIM, the application I showed you earlier, and transfers might be available and we get results done. And another day you run, transfers might be busy. And this also related to some numerical libraries. You need to make sure they're up to date and then matching with the application codes. So as we're getting a whole lot of CyberGIS users into this exciting realm, and this all becomes important, especially as we in the cyber infrastructure community now trying to understand the nature of reproducibility of such experiments in the scientific world. So the GIS community is now getting increasing attention to the frontiers of CyberGIS. This specific special issue on this leading GIS journal basically is to get a community attention to this area. Speaking of the scalable geospatial software ecosystems, and if we piece the three modalities of of CyberGIS together. The GISoft middleware is more at the workflow level, but the gateway you could see is also very related because you need to work with the user interface and the online environment to make sure that workflow is properly managed. And the toolkit is more of the building blocks of the workflow components from the scalable analytics point of view. And we've been working with multiple cyber environments and resources as listed at the bottom of this slide. But on the top, this is largely driven by many applications to achieve geospatial discovery and innovation. So science with the CyberGIS is equally exciting. Many science domains, I used hydrology as an example, but we have use case scenarios in assessing the impacts of climate change and also public health. If we have time, I could show you a few more demos along these lines. But this special feature back 2011, now it's already several years old, provided a small collection of cases you would correlate to science with the CyberGIS. And we recognize this is a fast-growing area, and education is also very important. So through the software grant, Yan and I and Nancy and a number of others, we have this CyberGIS Fellows program now ongoing in a very exciting way, working with 13 institutions and the 17 fellows. We are developing community-driven curricula and learning materials. And at the same time, these materials are getting experimented, adopted across all these campuses and institutions. So we recognize we have to do a very diligent job to educate the next generation to cope with this challenge, but take advantage of the advances and opportunities. I was mentioning multiple modalities of cyber resources and environments, but they are still very challenging in terms of delivering the potential of interactive and scalable and collaborative analytics all together. So addressing this very unique aspect of CyberGIS workflow in a synergistic way. So we're fortunate to get this new instrument, new supercomputer specifically tailored to the geospatial characteristics and the CyberGIS workflow requirements. It's a machine of about $2 million, packaging multiple modalities of computing and data access, and also taking advantage of a cloud provisioning approach with the software we've been developing, engaging the broad community. And this is also having a number of science domains requirements with lined up researchers supported by NSF, basically all of the directorates sponsored researchers, but also USGS, EPA, NASA, USDA, NIH, worth about $40 million sponsored research are getting prepared to take advantage of this unique resource that would make CyberGIS workflows scalable and interactive and collaborative. And the machines now assembled into a single one computer, and now is getting ready for some friendly user testing. If you know any scientists want to become friendly users, please feel free to drop me a note. So we're quite excited, I think, with this machine as a backend, coupled with other resources we have been using in the past. The CyberGIS workflow is going to be achieving very desirable impact on the science. So the vision really is a two-way vision to cut across the four tiers of knowledge. I was addressing synergizing between critical spatial thinking and principles and theories, and recognizing advanced cyber infrastructure will continue to enable and accelerate digital transformation of nearly all science and engineering domains, and even humanities and others. So I think CyberGIS workflows have a huge role to play to empower this two-way interaction from integration and synthesis point of view. I hope today I provide you a good picture for you to understand what need to take to even go to the next level. So the work presented here, I should acknowledge multiple units here at UIUC. They invested our CyberGIS Center for Advanced Digital and Spatial Study, which is campus-wide, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary research and education center, and also a number of grants from NSF and also partnership with industry that really, I think, make this work not only scientifically exciting, but really have very broad impacts. So I'll close up here. I think we still have a good amount of time for Q&A, and I thank you for your attention, and be happy to discuss further with any details you want to know. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Xiaowen. So we have a little bit of time for questions. Thankfully, Xiaowen built in 10 minutes of time worth of technical difficulties, so we finished on time. So do we have any questions?
Xiaowen, this is Nancy. The workflow that you showed for CowDem looked pretty complex. What it seems the workflows call. What were some of the challenges in implementing that, and did you use a particular package, like Pegasus or Kepler or those sorts of things?
No, we did not. This is a homegrown workflow, as we've had the homegrown workflow mostly coming out of the middleware of GISolve, and also the Pegasus or Kepler workflow. They do not have either GIS tailored or very specific user interface level support, because the GIS has a long tradition of user interface level support for workflow management. In fact, for instance, ArcGIS, the popular commercial solution, has a workflow solution that's called Model Builder. It's very much GUI based. So considering all those factors, we started the homegrown approach, taking advantage of the GISolve middleware related pieces, and also constructed the user interface level implementation. I think it's JavaScript based. Yes, GST, right? Yeah. So I was checking with Yan on the user interface side. So it's very much a workflow, a homegrown workflow. We hope to standardize this by working with the broad CyberGIS community, because we see other related applications could take advantage of this. In fact, at the moment, Yan, I, and a bunch of others in the CyberGIS context are thinking to modularize this kind of workflow so that we could make it accessible to the community and figure out how do we package them in a reusable fashion.
So Xiaowen, can you summarize what you see as the differences between GIS or CyberGIS workflow and its requirements and a more general system?
Yeah, I was attempting to use the title I had today. So it needs to be interactive. I think that's a pretty unique feature of the CyberGIS workflow because a lot of times we directly interact with the maps and GIS users in the long time multiple decades got spoiled by being able to interacting with map analytics. Now we are developing CyberGIS, of course, based on cyber infrastructure, taking advantage of high-end computing capabilities, big data, resources, but we have to bear in mind a lot of users or applications sciences are dependent on CyberGIS, also look to the interactivity they would normally see from conventional GIS tools. I think that has a quite uniqueness compared to at least what I saw from other kinds of workflows, including some standard cyber infrastructure-based workflow solutions, generally more focused on getting the underlying cyber infrastructure resources managed optimal way or simple way. But when we consider CyberGIS workflow, I think one very major consideration is about interactivity. And I think scalability, I was trying to explain how do we scale CyberGIS analytical components so that the individual components are part of the CyberGIS workflow are able to scale to the supercomputers and to the big data computing environments. Of course, another one is collaborative. Now, especially we have the CyberGIS gateway around for a little while, and people started thinking, wow, the potential is huge if you have multiple users coming to this environment and solving some geospatial problems in a collaborative fashion, not only just sharing maps or data, but also you could actually have different parts of the workflow coming together or reused or improved. So it's, I think it's a potential growing area to enable collaborative problem solving. Again, traditionally, this is not a focus of the GIS tools in the past because users of GIS in the past very much get used to individual user mode. Now with CyberGIS Gateway, I think we have an opportunity for the collaborative aspects. Another thing I mentioned earlier is this interactivity also leads to the user interface. It's not only just have tags or any representation of your workflow to match with the cyber infrastructure resources, but also you have the maps going to be associated with those graphical representation on the user interface level. That is a desirable feature of CyberGIS workflow inherited from the GIS workflow in the past.
Yeah, sure. And I think very, very nice talk. And I think you answered most of the question, but I'm just curious and explicitly on that complicated TODM workflow, how many of those components run on Exceed, or basically how many are HPC intensive there?
I think most of them, right, were all of them. Yan told me even more. All of them individual pieces of TODM. I think mostly we're using Trestles, right? Yeah. Mostly we're using Trestles. So it's MPI based. We are considering other parallel programming languages, but at the moment it's all MPI based. The Trestles supercomputer at SDSC is our most loved supercomputer for that workflow.
So, Shawan?
Yes.
So, how do people integrate or federate data that is externally deployed? I mean, at a different resource. Is there a way to ingest data that is available in some third-party locations?
Yeah. In fact, this is a problem tackled by the geospatial community for a long time. The geospatial community, in terms of the big data challenges specific to the variety problem, because the geospatial data is inherently having the variety as a big challenge. This is a multi-decades-old problem. The geospatial community, in fact, has done a very good job of defining data standards. You might have heard of this Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC, is a standard body that includes a large number of data standards. Even for online mapping, you might have heard of web mapping service or web feature service. These kinds of standards enable third-party data to be defined with good metadata into standards and then getting accessed without a whole lot of overhead involved. So there are, for instance, federal agencies or state agencies hold some public geospatial data. They follow such standards that makes it easy for CyberGIS analytics or for some of our work dealing with big data. We basically follow those standards. There are data pieces not having good support from existing standards. We trying to also come up with appropriate metadata by leveraging existing standards. So my short answer is the geospatial community has been doing a very good job in either creating standards or following existing standards for accessing each other's data, because quite a few government agencies, they have mandated to make their data available related to geospatial and environmental cases and problems.
So you're saying as long as the data is available in one of those standards, then it is straightforward to ingest the data into the system.
Yeah. We generally have good technical understanding to take advantage of the openly available data. But there's caveat, that is generally you need not only the standards but some data transformation tools and the libraries to get to the exact form you need to for your applications. That is generally a technically deep process because it requires you, even if you have good metadata, for instance, for some data sources, you still need to convert to right projections, right units, resolutions to match with your other data or analytics. That process, at the moment, it's still a big challenge in the geospatial community, and especially for dealing with the sizable data, the volume of data, for transforming large amount of data into the appropriate resolution, references, projections. It's not an easy problem.
Hi, Xiaowen. This is Mona. First of all, thank you for an interesting talk. And you've already touched on a little bit about the user interface and the collaborative stuff, but I was wondering if you give a little more detail on sort of the visualization aspect of how you guys are currently doing it, and maybe what are your future goals or challenges that you can see.
Yeah, you might want to speak to that?
Yeah, for the visualization part, we often deal with a large geospatial data set in both input and output. That imposes some challenges on the computing part, because most of the visualization servers, mapping servers, they run on a single server. If we are going to visualize 10 or 100 gigabytes of tau DEM results, that server itself doesn't hold the computing needs if people do interactive visualization, like zooming, panning, and even reprojection. So currently our strategy is to move the computationally intensive part of the visualization calculation into the computation workflow itself, meaning run those visualization jobs also on Trezors. That way we can leverage the supercomputing power and come back with the results with the visualization part of it. So that's the computation part. All of the visualization results we publish as standard open geospatial consortium services such as web mapping service, web coverage service, and web feature services. They can be further reused as a data source, and those services also support some basic data transformation functions of a geospatial data set, like format transformation. So that can be reused in other workflows, taking those output as input.
Okay, thank you.
And could you also say, because this workflow user interface, I was talking to also modularize and standardize the implementation.
Yeah, so the interface that we have to develop for GIS users always have map on it. During the construction of the workflow, they want to see the map. They want to do some interactive visualization of the input data. And the input data is usually also big, like the 10-meter resolution national elevation data set. It's about 200 gigabytes. So we also had to do some visualization work to make sure the interactivity is not affected in terms of response time from the visualization server. Some of the techniques, including generating the map tiles beforehand and putting that into mapping server based on the number of zoom levels we support. These kind of computational side of things, we consider that in the application level workflow and the computing workflow level too, because it affects the responsiveness of the user interface.
Other questions? Did that answer your question, Mona?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a quick last one, Yan. So you're saying like most of the applications run on trestles, right? And then like you're also balancing this interactivity. So how are you able to deal with the interactivity versus the HPC computations?
Yeah, this is a trade-off. Fortunately, the data sources we need to show to the users at the time of workflow construction, we pre-computed them. But if user uploads 10 gigabytes of geospatial data, we currently can only use the local resources to do the visualization and the metadata extraction. Using HPC resources have this drawback of this long queuing time. We can do the reservation in advance, but those are typically not a good practice that can generate desirable user experience. But as Shawn mentioned, we are getting this CyberGIS MRI cluster. We'll configure part of that as a dedicated resource for interactive analysis and to address these kind of very responsive requirements from our users.
And also in the implementations of the current gateway features and applications from the user interface point of view, once we get into the HPC computing cycle, we generally take this proactive approach, getting users updated what's going on, so that users have awareness of the where this computing is going. This at least not having the results readily available within a very short period of time. Generally, users would expect from, for instance, desktop GIS tools, but at least they will get alerted, where the computation is going and what's the progress. So we have some user interface features to show or alert users. This is this is not done. This is moving, or some even perhaps running into problems they need to know. So the interactivity is at multiple level, but the most desirable level, of course, is the computation could be done very quickly. The visualization, all the workflow could be wrapped up within a short amount of time, so that users would would be able to enjoy the analytics. A lot of use cases, especially related to, for instance, emergency management, where that particular context is a killer GIS application. Then the interactivity is not only just you need to enjoy, it's oftentimes associated with the consequences of having that or without having it. It makes a huge difference as to the results of emergency management. So I think we just need to push the envelope of future supercomputers and this broad ecosystem of advanced cyber infrastructure to respond to the kinds of the needs and requirements and challenges of CyberGIS workflow. Suresh, that's
yeah, that helps a lot. Thanks, Xuan. And actually, you might already see these responses from these newer kind of track 2 machines responding to that. So yeah, I think thanks for your insights there. Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, I think the new track 2 machines in certain ways are similar to the design principles of going to the MRI machines, more of a local Illinois UIUC resource, but it's also a service level 3, I believe, Exceed resource or service provider. So the MRI machine will be at a small percentage accessible to the national community in partnership with the Exceed. But the new track 2 machines, for instance, at Indiana will be coming up, I think also is quite attractive to respond to the workflow requirements, scalable, interactive, and collaborative, hopefully synergistically. So we look forward to taking advantage of some of those capabilities.
Yeah. Thanks, Xuan. Yeah.
Question: have you looked at any of the more data-intensive sort of systems, Hadoop and so on? Are they a better fit for what you do?
Yeah. Nice thing about CyberGIS workflows is it's having very broad spectrum of requirements. In fact, let me see if I could show you another application. This is I'm not sure whether I could share my right now I'm sharing my PowerPoint. See if I could share. Okay, so let me share my browser. So if you go to cybergis.org, are you able to see my browser?
Yeah.
Good. So you go to CyberGIS Sandbox. In fact, you could play with this application. It requires register, but that only takes a few minutes. You need email confirmation. There's a link you need to click to finish the registration, but that's generally very straightforward. So I need to log in. As you know, this is all have supercomputers behind the scene. We want to protect the access. But the application I'm going to show you is not so much based on conventional supercomputers. It's based on the combination of big data systems like Hadoop. As I mentioned, there are multiple applications. TauDIM I was talking about. But this application, it's called FluMapper. It's really an application of analyzing population dynamics data extracted from social media and coupled with the transportation data. So the idea of this analytics would be important to, for instance, this particular example is disease surveillance, infectious disease surveillance. And it's an interactive analytics. The difference here is you don't see the kind of deep workflow user interface as we saw from TAO-DIM. Here it's very much sort of intuitive map interface-based analytics. What I clicked was, place anywhere you want on the map, and automatically this draws the aggregated trajectories. For instance, I click the Chicago, and shows there's a flow number centered there going from Chicago to north. But this is mapped to the road network in the U.S. This is tailored to those users who have no GIS knowledge at all. So again, the CyberGIS workflow is a collective set of analytics that might serve different application or science communities. In this case, we assume you don't need to know about any geospatial technical knowledge to benefit from this analytics. There are some parameters you could work with, but the parameters are also configured in a sense to be friendly to users, as opposed to more toward the GIS end. It's more toward to the domain problem solving. So, for instance, I could click air. That would show the flights taken by tweeters. So the idea here is if you tweet here, next day I go to Indiana, Bloomington, I tweet there, that would represent a single user trajectory traveled from Champaign to Bloomington. Now, if you aggregate all these travels as indicated by tweets, it represents a travel pattern. And if you imagine this would be serving the purpose of looking at how seasonal flus is spreading or how some new disease is coming out, and people start tweeting, our hospital surveillance or public health agencies, they take reports generally coming out only after a few weeks of data collection. And for social media and some online transportation data, you combine them, you could get near real-time assessment of the situation, that you could even point your more serious data collection to those areas that are worrisome. So for this analytics, the workflow configuration, as we saw from TAO-DIM, is completely hidden from users. And the trajectory computing, the computing of the aggregation of trajectories and the patterns are based on Hadoop. We, in fact, I think, did we use Gordon? Yeah.
Gordon dynamic Hadoop cluster feature.
Yeah, so this particular computation for the trajectory mapping, Yan confirmed with me, used Gordon, but also we have some local Hadoop Spark and Shark resources. We are doing more on the research side as opposed to, now this is a 24/7, it's running all the time, and it's using a 7-day window. As you saw, I clicked a slide bar, and it's showing some hotspots. That's mapping of the tweets intensity with regard to the keywords mentioned related to flu, cough, sneeze, cold, those keywords. People are doing research about the correlation between those keywords and how much they could indicate it's a flu or not. So we look into those literature and take advantage of that knowledge. So yeah, this is an example of different kind of workflow represented at a user level, but also it's using more of those big data, as people tend to refer to in the buzzword sense. It's Hadoop as opposed to supercomputers.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions? I want to thank Xiaowen for good presentation, lots of good questions afterwards. And so we recorded this, and hopefully we'll get all the recordings of all the workflow presentations, including this one, up and available here pretty soon, and I'll send out announcements about when those are if you want to watch anything again or share this. Thanks again, Xiaowen.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, everybody. Good weekend.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Did you want to? Oh, we're good.
Good weekend, all.
You hold on.